You know the axe is coming when Ashley, our 26-year-old CEO who thinks synergy is a life philosophy, replaces the solid oak conference table with a circle of meditation cushions. You can't negotiate freight contracts with Wisconsin steel mills while sitting cross-legged on a purple pillow that squeaks every time you shift your weight. But I didn't think she'd actually pull the trigger on me. I'm Andrew Rodriguez, 54 years old, and I've been running operations at Great Plains Industrial Transport for 17 years. Before that, I spent 8 years in the Navy handling logistics for everything from aircraft carriers to supply runs in the Gulf. Started at 18, came out at 26, and dove straight into civilian logistics. I'm the reason 285 warehouses across 12 states run like clockwork. I'm the reason our drivers don't get stranded in Nebraska with broken-down forklifts and no spare parts. I sat across from Ashley in her transparency pod, a glass office that smelled like essential oils and overpriced coffee. She was wearing a blazer made from recycled plastic bottles and a smile that looked like it came from a corporate training manual. My dad, Christopher, who's 78 now and built this company from nothing, would have laughed her out of the building. "Andrew," she said, pressing her palms together like she was about to meditate. "We've been doing a deep assessment of the company's energy flow, and honestly, your management style feels very legacy-based. It doesn't align with our pivot toward collaborative optimization." I stared at her. The pack of Marlboro Reds in my jacket pocket suddenly felt heavy. "You're firing me because of my management style?" "It's not termination," she corrected, her voice dripping with that fake positivity they teach at Stanford Business School. "It's a realignment. We're realigning you to find an organization that matches your operational frequency. Your approach just doesn't sync with the future of industrial logistics." I looked at the clock on the wall. 1:15 p.m. The daily inventory sync, the digital heartbeat of this entire operation, was scheduled to run its authentication protocol at 1:30 p.m. It required my biometric access. My biometric access. Without it, the system doesn't just pause, it assumes a security breach and locks down everything like Fort Knox during a riot. "My approach," I repeated, tasting the words like stale beer. "All right, Ashley, you're the boss. You want a new energy? You got it." I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't slam anything. I didn't throw her organic succulents through the glass wall, even though the urge was stronger than my morning coffee craving. I just reached into my pocket, pulled out my security badge, the one with clearance levels higher than hers, and slid it across her reclaimed bamboo desk. "You've got 15 minutes, I said, my voice flat like a tire on gravel. Ashley blinked, confused. 15 minutes for what? To clear your desk? Take your time, Andrew. We want this transition to be holistic." 15 minutes before the ghost in the machine realizes I'm gone, I said, turning toward the door. "You see, Ashley, that legacy system you hate? It's held together by 20-year-old code, 3 backup servers in a basement in Kansas City, and my personal authentication. If I don't authorize the 1:30 p.m. sync, the system assumes hostile takeover. It cuts the connection to our lenders. It freezes the shipping manifests. The trucks stop. The forklifts lock." She laughed, a nervous sound like breaking glass. "You're bluffing. The IT team assured me everything is cloud native now." "The IT team?" I almost smiled. "You mean the 3 guys you hired because they had cool tattoos and claimed they knew blockchain? Good luck with that." I walked out. Past the open plan office, past the rows of 20-somethings staring at their laptops, and I felt something cold settling in my chest. Not anger anymore. The calm of a demolition expert watching the timer count down. She wanted a vibe check. I was about to give her a seismic event. The elevator down from the 35th floor took 40 seconds. Enough time to think about 17 years of missed dinners, canceled fishing trips, and nights spent sleeping on a cot in the Milwaukee warehouse because a blizzard knocked out power and the backup generators needed manual restart. I gave this company everything. My knees crack like gunshots when it rains because I spent the winter of 2018 walking concrete floors to manually verify inventory when the scanners went down. And for what? To be told my frequency was off by a kid whose hardest day involved choosing between oat milk and soy milk. The lobby was marble and glass, polished to perfection. I walked past the security desk where Daniel Miller sat doing his crossword. "Leaving early, Mr. Andrew?" Daniel asked, looking up from his puzzle. Permanent vacation, Daniel, I said, pulling out the company credit card and tossing it on his desk. Ashley's idea. Apparently I'm bad for the feng shui. Daniel snorted. That girl wouldn't know logistics if it ran her over with a semi. You take care. This place is going to fall apart without you. That's the plan, I muttered, pushing through the revolving doors. The moment I hit the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. Short, long. The panic pattern I'd programmed years ago for system alerts. Alert. System sync authorization missing. Warehouse 117. Warehouse 118. Warehouse 119. The list scrolled down my screen like credits where everyone dies at the end. It was 1:31 p.m. I lit a cigarette. Yeah, I know. Bad habit. But when you've inhaled diesel fumes and forklift exhaust for 17 years, a little tobacco feels like mountain air. I looked up at that glass tower, imagining the chaos starting to bloom on the 35th floor. Ashley was about to learn that gravity isn't a suggestion. Up there on the 35th floor, the silence was breaking. I knew exactly what was happening. The real-time profit dashboard Ashley had installed was flashing red, not a gentle warning red, we're talking nuclear. Meltdown red. My phone buzzed again. The operations group chat, a chat I'd been removed from 10 minutes ago, but the system hadn't updated permissions yet. Brian, VP Ops. Why is the Chicago Distribution Center showing zero inventory? Michelle, HR. Is this a system glitch? The dashboard shows negative stock. Ashley, CEO. Who has Andrew's override code? Someone call him. I exhaled smoke toward the glass tower. Override code wasn't something you wrote on a sticky note. It was 17 years of knowing that the scanner in Bay 12 of the Texas hub reads double on Tuesdays because of sun glare, and you manually adjust by 8%. It was knowing that the emergency reset wasn't a button, but a command line script I wrote in 2012 called nuclearoption.exe. They didn't just fire an employee, they lobotomized the operating system. I walked to my truck, a reliable Ford F-150 that had survived more road salt than a pretzel factory, and threw my bag in the passenger seat. I wasn't going home to drink beer and feel sorry for myself. I had one more stop to make. My phone was vibrating so hard on the console it was sliding toward the edge like a suicidal lemming. Incoming call, Ashley Pierce, CEO. I let it ring. Let them sweat. Let them feel the vibe of complete system failure. I put the truck in drive and merged into traffic. The chaos was just beginning, and I had front row seats. Here's what Ashley didn't understand. A logistics network is like a living organism. It breathes, it eats, it processes. Cut the nerve connection between the brain and the body, and things get messy fast. While I was driving toward the interstate, humming along to classic rock, the nerve center of Great Plains Industrial Transport was having a massive stroke. The legacy system wasn't just counting boxes. It was a translator. It took raw data from our ancient conveyor systems and converted it into clean numbers the banks wanted to see. Without my authentication, which ran data scrubbing scripts, the raw feed was hitting the main server for the first time in history. Back in the office, I could picture the scene shifting from mild concern to complete panic. The first symptom would be phantom inventory. The system, seeing unverified data, defaults to safe mode. In safe mode, to prevent theft, it marks everything as missing or quarantined. At 1:45 p.m., a sales rep in Detroit probably tried to process an order for 2,000 units of industrial welding equipment. He'd type in the SKU, hit enter, and watch the screen blink. Error, 0 stock available. That's impossible, he'd shout, spilling his energy drink. I counted 5 pallets this morning. He'd check again. Stock location, unknown. Status, missing. Multiply that by 285 warehouses, every single item showing as vanished into thin air. My phone went silent. Not because they stopped calling, but because I'd switched it to Do Not Disturb. The Bluetooth was still syncing notifications, though. Text from Sarah, Warehouse Mugger, Iowa. Andrew, the scanners are locked. Drivers backed up to the highway. One guy has a crowbar. Where are you? My heart went out to Sarah. Good people. Made killer BBQ ribs at the company picnic. Didn't deserve this mess. But collateral damage was unavoidable in war. The real problem wasn't the trucks, though. It was the money. We operated on a $45 million revolving credit line. The lenders had an algorithm that pinged our inventory levels every hour to ensure we had enough collateral to cover our loans. If inventory dropped below a certain threshold, the credit line froze automatically. At 2:00 p.m., inventory didn't just drop, it vanished completely. According to the computer, Great Plains Industrial Transport now owned absolutely nothing but some leased office furniture and expensive meditation cushions. I could picture Ashley standing in the chaos, her recycled blazer wrinkled, sweat staining her organic cotton shirt. The agile team she'd hired, kids who looked like they should be gaming instead of managing spreadsheets, would be frantically typing on keyboards that were no longer connected to anything that mattered. Reboot it. Ashley would be screaming, just restart the servers. But you can't reboot a famine. You can't restart a void. I was heading out of the city now, skyline shrinking in my rearview mirror. The air got cleaner, roads emptier. I was driving toward the only person who could appreciate the artistic beauty of this disaster. I reached for my water bottle and took a long drink. It tasted like freedom and vindication, but mostly vindication. The scary part, I hadn't even unleashed the worst of it yet. The kill switch wasn't just about hiding inventory, it was about routing. At 2:15 p.m., the automated dispatch system would update GPS coordinates for every truck in our fleet. If the inventory showed 0, the system assumed all trucks were empty. Standard protocol was to tell them to return to base immediately. 850 trucks halfway to their destinations were about to pull U-turns on highways across America. Medical equipment, construction materials, emergency supplies, all turning around because a computer thought they were hauling air. The radio DJ came on. Traffic alert. We're getting reports of major congestion building up on all routes into the industrial district. Avoid the area if you can. Music to my ears. By 2:30 p.m., Ashley's transparency pod had probably turned into a war zone of incompetence. I knew exactly what was happening because I knew who she'd hired to replace my team. She'd fired Kevin Murphy, my lead systems admin, a guy who looked like a thumb but could code assembly language in his sleep. In his place, she'd hired some digital nomad who listed blockchain disruptor on LinkedIn and worked from coffee shops. Here's the thing about blockchain disruptors. They think everything lives in the cloud. They think if something breaks, you just spin up a new instance. But our system wasn't in some Amazon cloud. It was running on mainframe servers in the basement of a building in Kansas City that flooded every time it rained hard. My phone lit up with another notification, a voicemail. I tapped play through the truck speakers. Andrew, this is Ashley. Look, there seems to be a minor synchronization issue with our data flow. We need your access codes immediately. This isn't professional behavior. If you don't call back in 5 minutes, I'm contacting our legal team. You can't hold company assets hostage like this. Company assets? I laughed so hard I startled a deer grazing in the field I was passing. Lady, those assets are a cognitive map of a 17-year puzzle that exists entirely in my head. You can't sue me for my memories. The irony was beautiful. For years I'd begged for budget to upgrade our systems. I'd written proposal after proposal, critical infrastructure failure imminent without modernization. Ashley had used those proposals as coasters for her kombucha, told me I was being resistant to innovation and change. Well, how's that for change? Back at headquarters, they'd be flooding the conference rooms, printing spreadsheets from last month, trying to manually reconcile inventory. It's 2024 and they're probably digging through filing cabinets looking for fax machines. Does anyone actually know how this system works? Someone would shout. The silence that followed that question was my resume. That silence was every weekend I'd worked for free. That silence was the void left by every thank you they never said. I pulled off the highway onto a gravel road. Trees were dense here, shielding the world from the chaos I'd left behind. Reception was spotty, but a text managed to squeeze through from an unknown number. Unknown. Lenders just froze the credit line. Trucks are turning around mid-route. Ashley's locked in the bathroom crying, "What the hell did you do?" The number looked familiar. Probably Kevin Murphy, my old systems admin. Good old Kevin. Likely hacked into the internal communications just to watch the fireworks from wherever Ashley had banished him. I didn't reply. I just kept driving up the winding path toward the lake house. The engine ticked and cooled as the road leveled out. I wasn't just driving to a cabin. I was driving to see the man who started it all. The man who actually understood what a logistics operation meant. Because the only thing scarier than an experienced operator with the keys to the kingdom is that same operator bringing the founder out of retirement. Christopher Rodriguez's cabin wasn't some weekend getaway. It was a fortress made of cedar and stone, overlooking a lake that looked like hammered steel. Dad founded Great Plains Industrial Transport 25 years ago with 2 trucks and a herniated disc. He retired 3 years ago, handing control to the board with explicit instructions. Don't mess with operations. Let Andrew run the engine. You just handle the paperwork and stay out of his way. I parked next to his vintage Chevy Silverado. The air smelled like pine needles and wood smoke. Quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you remember what peace feels like. Dad was on the porch, cleaning his fishing gear. He looked like a bear that had decided to wear flannel and retire gracefully. He looked up as I walked over, eyes narrowing under thick white eyebrows. "You're supposed to be in the 1:30 sync meeting," he said. His voice sounded like gravel tumbling in a cement mixer. "Got realigned," I said, leaning against the porch railing. My energy didn't match their vision. Dad's hands stopped moving. He looked at me, then at his tackle box, then back at me. "Your energy. My operational frequency was too legacy-based, blocking the collaborative flow." Dad slowly set down his gear. He didn't explode. Dad never exploded. He imploded, creating a vacuum that sucked all the oxygen from the immediate area. "Ashley fired you. On a Wednesday. Before the sync. Realigned me. Gave me 15 minutes to transition holistically." Dad closed his eyes and did the math instantly. He knew the system better than anyone except me. Knew about the credit lines, knew about the truck routing algorithms, knew about the phantom inventory protocols. "The lenders?" he asked quietly, frozen as of about an hour ago. "The trucks?" "U-turns on I-70. Probably made the evening traffic report by now." Dad let out a long, slow breath that seemed to carry 25 years of frustration. He reached for a bottle of bourbon sitting on the table and poured 2 glasses. No ice. Slid one across to me. "You warned her?" "Told her she had 15 minutes. She asked if I wanted to take a mindfulness break to process the transition energy." Dad took a sip of bourbon and stared out at the lake. A pair of eagles circled overhead, probably wondering what all the human drama was about. "I built that company with blood and missed birthdays," he said finally. "Missed your high school graduation to secure the Midwest distribution contract. Missed your mother's anniversary to fix the routing algorithm when that ice storm hit in 2019. He turned to look at me, and I could see the fire still burning in those old eyes. "And she fired the chief mechanic because she didn't like the grease under his fingernails." He pulled out a satellite phone from his jacket pocket. "Only thing that worked reliably out here in the woods." "Who you calling?" I asked. "Chairman of the board," Dad said, punching in numbers with deliberate precision. "Then the bank. Then probably my lawyer." He put the phone to his ear and waited. When someone answered, his voice shifted into that tone I remembered from when I was a kid and had broken something important. "Brian, it's Christopher. Shut up and listen carefully. My daughter-in-law just severed the central nervous system of our company. No, don't put me on hold. Don't transfer me to Ashley. She doesn't understand what's happening. And neither do you, apparently. Pull the audit logs right now. Look for the termination of user Andrew Admin Prime. Yeah, that's the one. When you see the timestamps, you're gonna need something stronger than coffee." He paused, listening to what sounded like panicked squawking from the other end of the line. "Fix it?" Dad laughed, a dark, terrifying sound that made the eagles change direction. "Brian, I can't fix it. You can't fix it. The IT team you're so proud of can't fix it. There's exactly one person on this planet who can fix it, and he's currently sitting on my porch drinking my bourbon and watching the sunset. You better hope he's in a negotiating mood." He hung up and looked at me with a grim smile playing around the edges of his mouth. "Emergency board meeting. They're patching us in via conference call." "Us? You think I'm doing this without backup?" Dad stood up, his knees cracking like gunshots. "You're the asset now, Andrew. Right now, you're the most valuable asset in their entire portfolio. Your price just went up considerably." He walked inside to the landline, an old rotary phone sitting on a desk made of solid oak. Only phone he trusted for serious business negotiations. I followed him in, finishing my bourbon. The sun was dipping below the tree line, casting long shadows across the cabin floor. Outside, the world was peaceful. But 200 miles away, I knew the corporate world was burning. The phone rang with that shrill mechanical sound only rotary phones can make. Dad picked it up on the second ring. "Speak." He listened for a moment, his face carved from granite. Then he looked at me and winked. No, Ashley isn't invited to this call. Put her in the waiting room or the daycare center. I don't care. We're talking about adults now. He put the phone on speaker. The static crackled through the cabin like a campfire. Andrew, you there? It was Brian Walsh, chairman of the board. His voice sounded like he'd been gargling gravel in panic. I'm here, Brian, just enjoying the peaceful energy out here by the lake. I could hear the tension in that boardroom 200 miles away. Could almost hear the squeak of expensive leather chairs as they shifted uncomfortably. Andrew, Brian said, his voice trying for authority but landing somewhere near desperation. We need to resolve this situation immediately. The lenders are threatening to call in the loans. We're hemorrhaging cash by the second. Stock price is in free fall. Sounds stressful, Brian. But I don't work for Great Plains anymore. I was realigned, remember? My frequency didn't match the future vision. Yes, we know. A complete misunderstanding. Ashley acted prematurely. Ashley acted like a fool with a hand grenade, Dad cut in, his voice booming through the speaker. Now let's cut through the corporate nonsense. You want the system operational? You need Andrew. He's the only one with biometric root access and the institutional knowledge. That tech team you hired is trying to crowbar open a digital vault. If they force it, they'll wipe the entire database permanently. Silence from the boardroom. They knew it was true. In the background, I could hear what sounded like muffled arguments and someone typing frantically. What do you want, Andrew? Brian asked finally. I looked at Dad. He nodded slowly, like a general giving permission to open fire. First, I said, counting on my fingers even though they couldn't see me. I don't come back as an employee. I come back as Vice President of Operations. My salary triples with a 12-month contract paid up front. Non-negotiable. That's a significant increase. The trucks are stopped, Brian, I reminded him. Do you want to negotiate salary, or do you want freight moving again? Done. Agreed. Too fast. I should have asked for quadruple. Second, I continued, complete operational autonomy. No energy assessments, no meditation breaks, no agile sprints run by people who've never loaded a pallet. I hire my old team back immediately. Kevin Murphy, Sarah Bennett, all of them. With 30% raises and written apologies from the board. That's highly irregular. HR policies clearly state, Brian, I interrupted, your HR policies are very comprehensive, I'm sure. But right now your trucks are sitting on highways like very expensive lawn ornaments. You want to discuss policy or get this company moving? A long pause. More muffled arguing in the background. Fine, agreed. What's the third condition? Third, and this is absolutely non-negotiable. Ashley gets removed from any operational oversight. She's not allowed to speak to me, email me, or breathe suggestions about blockchain optimization anywhere near my department. She can stay in her glass pod and play with her succulents until you figure out what to do with her. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Removing the founder's daughter-in-law was delicate corporate politics. She's family, Andrew, Brian said carefully. She's a liability, Dad growled into the phone. Do it, Brian, or I'll sell my 40% stake tomorrow morning and tank the stock so hard you'll be delisted by lunch. Okay. We'll restructure her role. Strategic partnerships, vision development, completely separate from operations. Excellent, I said. Draft the contracts. Send them to Dad's fax machine. Yes, he still has one. It's more reliable than your current CEO. When can you be there? Please, Andrew. Every minute costs us thousands. I'm 2 hours away. System stays down until I physically walk through those doors and authenticate personally. Can't you just give us the access codes over the phone? I paused for dramatic effect, taking a sip of bourbon. Brian, I said, letting my operational frequency really flow through the conversation. My energy needs to be physically present to facilitate the holistic system restoration. The digital chakras require manual realignment. Isn't that how these things work? Dad was grinning like a shark who'd just discovered a school of fish. I hung up. Dad let out a bark of laughter that probably scared wildlife for miles around. You're absolutely ruthless, son. I'm proud of you. You taught me to fix machines, Dad. Ashley taught me how to break them systematically. We raised our glasses to the silence of 850 trucks and 285 warehouses. For 2 more hours, the corporate world would have to wait. I pulled into the Great Plains parking lot at 8:00 p.m. The building blazed with lights on every floor. Looked like a disaster movie, but with better parking. Dad rode shotgun in his Silverado, following my truck. We walked into the lobby like we owned the place, which, technically, we kind of did. Daniel Miller was still at the security desk, surrounded by executives in expensive suits who looked like they'd been chewing glass. When Daniel saw me, he stood up and actually saluted. "Welcome back, sir. Been an interesting evening." We took the elevator to the 35th floor. The smell hit me immediately. Stale coffee, nervous sweat, and the distinct aroma of corporate panic. Ashley's transparency pod was packed tighter than a shipping container. Brian, the chairman, the entire legal team, and huddled in the corner on her meditation cushion was Ashley herself. She looked like someone had run her through an industrial washing machine. When I walked in, the room went dead silent. You could have heard a stock price drop. "Contracts are signed," Brian said, thrusting a stack of papers at me like a peace offering. "Wire transfer is confirmed. Please, Andrew, make it stop." I walked past them all to my old desk. Someone had already cleared half of it, replacing my ergonomic chair with an exercise ball. I kicked the ball across the room. It bounced off the glass wall with a deeply satisfying thunk. I sat down in a real chair I dragged over, opened my laptop, and plugged into the hardline. The terminal screen was solid red error messages. System lockdown. Authentication required. I typed my username, Andrew Ops Prime. I entered my password, placed my thumb on the scanner. Biometric confirmed. Initiating sync. Reconciling inventory. Restoring credit lines. The screen turned from angry red to peaceful green in exactly 30 seconds. The room exhaled collectively. Phones started ringing, the sound of a company coming back to life. I closed the laptop and stood up. Inventory is live. Trucks will receive updated routing in 90 seconds. Lenders will see restored assets within 5 minutes. I looked directly at Ashley, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. "My team returns at 8 a.m. tomorrow. I want the meditation cushions gone and a coffee machine that serves actual caffeine." Then I walked to the elevator, wrote it down, and drove to an all-night diner for the best steak of my life. Sometimes the old ways work best. Vibe check complete.